Welcome back to the Phoenix Mercury podcast. My name is Erica, and this is my co-host Steven. This is our first show of the season. I want to make sure everyone can hear me because I don't think I can hear Steven right now.
Yep, we all
Awesome.
good.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to our first show. We're going to get started with discussing a little bit of what we've been seeing so far in um, training camp, as well as what a little bit to expect from the season. Steven, you want to get started?
Yeah, I think the first thing to speak to with training camp is it's almost like a breath of fresh air around the team. Obviously, we had the um, non-basketball adversities. I'll just say it like that with Brittany Griner and her safety and all of the concerns that came with whether she actually even wanted to play basketball last season. All of which she answered in abundance last season. Even showcasing growth in addition to just generally being on the floor and healthy. So I think that in and of itself is going to add to everything else we're going to see with obviously the additions of Natasha Cloud, Rebecca Allen in free agency, and then obviously trading for Kalia Copper as well. It's a pretty much a surprising kind of cherry on top in addition to everything else that they did. So Matt Ishbia, new owner of both the Suns and the Mercury, coming in swinging for the fences. Nate Tibbetts being on the sideline, a coach in his first year. There's a lot of newness around this team, and I think it's something that both Brittany Griner as well as Diana Taurasi will kind of take full advantage of. Obviously, with conversations we've had, with not knowing how much longer Diana's going to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like after seeing practice yesterday and watching a little bit of the training camp B-rolls, the vibes are so good comparatively when you look last season to this season. Nate Tibbetts has really taken well with the girls. The players look really happy. Everyone seems to be in a good frame of mind and ready for a fresh start, like you said, for the season. And I think that's a really good place to be at the beginning here at training camp.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I'm curious, like just generally speaking, what stood out to you, whether it be in person or just on like the Zoom calls or just the general interactions with the coach and obviously the new players as well.
You can definitely see the players that have been with the Mercury for a little while are taking sort of ownership and leadership in the team. Obviously, they trust their coach, but they want to make sure everyone finds their place in Phoenix and feels at home. And you can see it with the older players and even the newer players like Natasha Cloud. You can tell that she's really taken some rookies under her wing. Bella Mercatete has been huge in terms of establishing culture in this training. Would not be shocked if Bella is one of the rookies that makes the final roster this year. Her Everyone in the training or in the coaching staff speaks so highly of her. And yesterday when I walked into the facilities, the very first thing I could hear was Bella screaming, and I'm like 3 doors away from Bella, and I can hear her hyping her teammates up in there. And just the vibes when you walk in were so good. And yeah, I just Nate Tibbetts has really stepped into the role well. Also, I think like I said, the players have really taken well to her better than I think most people anticipated. I know that a lot of people buried their eyebrows when he was hired, but I think overall the players feel is a good hire. And so, what more can you ask for when you're building a roster like they're trying to do when you have a coach that's bought into what ownership is doing as well?
Yeah, I think Bella certainly is kindred to Natasha Cloud in terms of vibes, and there's a certain presence when they walk into a room or even when they step on the floor where it kind of just uplifts the spirits of everybody. And honestly, that's a form of leadership. And leadership is a big thing for me with specifically with Natasha. So if you didn't have anything else you wanted to speak on as far as training camp goes with what you've seen, I kind of wanted to transition to speaking about the one and only Natasha Cloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, with Natasha, I mean, if you don't follow her on Twitter, there will be a lot that you will have to get caught up on as far as seeing the deposits of leadership that she's displayed over the course of her career on the court and off the floor. But I think all Mercury fans will, if you're not well acquainted with Natasha, you'll quickly realize just how much she values leadership and how impactful it is upon not just rising her level of play and accountability, but also raising the level of competition and just getting the most out of her teammates as well. Natasha, bar none, is one of the best leaders in the league. You can put her toe to toe with anybody, and she has a resume in addition to her general personality that really just screams that this is a player that I think any general manager would desire to have leading their franchise, especially one that's contending. And in addition to her experience, just the general way that she carries herself is something that's going to be important as a piece of glue in terms of connecting all of the newness that we talked about in the opening that's surrounding this team, being an extension of the head coach, talent and skill wise, being one of the best point guards in the WNBA still, and as a teammate, also being one of the better teammates in the W. And again, if you're getting all of these things from a player that's initiating all of your offense and initiating your defense as well, you really can't start at a better place than Natasha. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on her, and just generally, what have you observed from your interactions with Natasha lately?
Yeah, no, she's definitely taken the role on of a leader, and like you said, she's one of the best people in the league. She's the very definition of talks and walks the talk. She does exactly what she says she's going to do, and she's a phenomenal leader. And like you said, she has the resume to back it up. In training camp, I really feel like she has taken a lot of those rookies under her wing and tried to make them feel like they belong in training camp, which I feel like is huge for their confidence. I don't feel like you have a very good opportunity to make a roster in this league if you don't walk in with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder and that confidence. And I feel like she's really just pouring into her people here. And I think she feels wanted here, which I'm not sure exactly if that was the case in Washington, but she feels wanted and loved here, which I think is new for her.
Yeah, and I think all of these things that we're both speaking on, if we're talking about the foundation of someone that's going to be, again, a leader and a captain, all of these things, it really just doesn't get better than Natasha. We could probably spend an entire podcast just speaking about everything that Natasha is, both on the court and off the court, and statistically, and all of this fun stuff as a point guard and whatnot. But did you have any more thoughts on Natasha before we transition to anyone else or anything else?
No, no, go ahead.
I think the other big thing, as far as the marquee names added to the roster, obviously Kalia Copper, electrifying 2021 Finals MVP, rapidly ascending as one of the better, if not, however you want to rank it subjectively, top 10 players in the W. I think if you're looking at, for the Phoenix Mercury, looking at not just with Diana Taurasi, but life after Diana, I think they addressed both of those things directly in making the most of an opportunity that came up somewhat out of thin air, unexpectedly, and being able to not just have a negotiation in terms of how to facilitate a trade, but actually executing and pushing that across the finish line. Kalia Copper is going to change a lot of things for this Phoenix Mercury team. I think she helps to obviously insulate Diana Taurasi scoring wise and defensively on the perimeter. But I think also the pace that she plays at is going to benefit not just Natasha Cloud, also Sophie Cunningham, as well as Brittany Griner, and even Rebecca Allen, who's another big name that we'll get to momentarily. But kind of before I dive more into Kalia, I'm curious, what have been your early observations, is just your general thoughts on Kalia Copper?
Kalia is definitely one of the quieter players in training camp. She kind of, I won't say sticks to herself. I haven't gotten an opportunity to talk with her just yet. But kind of the same thing with Natasha, where you can see that she's come in and she's found her role and she's excited to play in that role. I think above all else, I talk about one of my biggest things is will to win and how bad do you want to win. And I think that that's a big make or break factor in more basketball teams than people want to talk about. And with this team, I think when you have Kalia Copper, Natasha Cloud, like you mentioned, Sophie Cunningham, you just named three of the scrappiest and willingest players in the league. They want it so bad. And so I think when you add a player like Kalia into that mix, I mean, you're just asking for something special to happen in Phoenix.
I think you said that extremely well. And quite honestly, with my time spent covering Kalia Copper here in Chicago, and naturally, not intentionally, but following her to Phoenix as well. One of the things that I've always said about Kalia Copper, whether that be with previous coaches and press conferences, or her former teammates in Chicago, or even media members, the first thing I think of when I think of Kalia is capital D dog. She, the will, you said it, the will to win. Nobody's more competitive than Kalia. People might be close to or somewhat on par in the same vicinity of her, but nobody wants it as bad as Kalia Copper does. And you talked about her being more on the quiet side in terms of, the players and the talking and everything. It's because her form and style of leadership is not of the vocal. I think, and that's where the balancing act of the additions they've made kind of works in tandem with each other. Natasha is a lot more vocal, and she also does it very well by showing it, as we saw in the playoffs last season, and we've seen pretty much every season of her career. But she's
Yeah.
a lot more vocal, which naturally is something that comes with being a point guard or a quarterback or any position where you're initiating things for your team so consistently as an extension of a head coach. With Kalia Copper, she toed into her leadership more last season after she had an uptick in terms of what the Sky were looking to get from her. So there were good reps for her entire season last season in terms of just taking leaps as a leader and just being more vocal and whatnot. I think those deposits will add up with the Mercury for her in time. But I think with her kind of finding her role and her niche, as you mentioned, the biggest thing is that she shows it with her activity and her play. You might not hear that much from her until, of course, she starts dropping 20, 25 points and she's talking to the opponents and also charging up her teammates, and that hard charging style of play that makes her straight unique compared to any other player in the W. And I just generally think that's such a good balancing, because obviously you don't need too many vocal leaders, but you also don't need too many people that are on the more quiet side. So naturally, two of your now best four players on the team have a perfect synergy between each other in a leadership perspective. And I think they'll both serve as big time spark plugs for the Phoenix Mercury around everything that Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner already have established here.
To speak a little bit on that trade too, it's almost a dream team that no one's ever thought of before with Kalia, and it's like really like how have they both been in the league this long and no one's thought of this before? Like they are perfect together, and I'm really excited to watch it unfold on the court this year. I'm ready for the preseason game tomorrow so we can see it a little bit in action, you know?
Yeah, those two are very much kindred spirits. They had some competitive back and forths when they were with their respective franchises before coming to Phoenix. And I think if those things are any type of tea leaves in terms of what we're looking to expect going forward, the team is going to be in a very good place. Obviously, they'll come with some leaps and whatnot throughout the regular season as they establish the chemistry and foundation and identity and all of those things. But come playoff time, you have two proven players that have shown to step up in roles in seasons past that they might not have played over the course of the regular season. When the teams need it, when their teams have needed it, they show up in spades. And I think, again, if you have that, in addition to everything that Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi already are, you're really working with something if you get the puzzle pieces to fit together in an optimized way. And I think Nate Tibbetts is the coach to do that for them at this present state.
I really feel like last year's roster felt like a legacy roster in a sense. Like we had all-time greats, goats, all these players that were so phenomenal, but they just couldn't put it together. And this year feels like an Olympic level like team. Like when the first time you and I had a conversation on the phone, we were talking about All-Star Weekend, and like there's four potential All-Stars on this team, and you could even throw in a fifth if you really wanted to get crazy. You know what I mean? Like the possibilities with this roster are endless, and it's very refreshing after last year.
It really is. It really is. And I mean, you said, a dream team.
Yeah.
Honestly, if the just having the opportunity to even put this roster together before actually seeing it on the court, just on paper, presuming what the starting five would be, and we can see if we're on the same page with it between obviously Brittany at the 5, Sophie at the 4, Kalia Copper at the 3, Diana at the 2, and Natasha at the 1. Are we on the same page with that?
I would say that that's safe to
Yeah.
say at this
Yeah.
point.
So I mean, looking at it on paper, how many other teams across the entire W are you going to, if we're just power ranking starting fives? How many teams starting five are you going to put even like a half step ahead of what the Phoenix Mercury have on paper? I
Yeah.
think there is just tons of versatility on both sides of the floor. They have athleticism and size around Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, something that they certainly emphasized when they were trying to transition to this new era of the franchise. They have speed to get up and down the floor, so they don't have to be bogged down in the half court. And I think those league low ratings that they saw, I think they were 11th in offensive rating, 12th in defensive rating, and they were dead last as well in net rating. I think those things are generally going to see a major uptick. They should be elite in each one of those three marks. And again, if the pieces fit together, I don't think there's any goal that's unreachable for this team just based off of what we've seen on paper.
Agreed. I think the biggest leap that we should see this season is in defense. I think that scoring, obviously, their if offensive rating has not been great, but I think on the eye test, they really don't have a problem scoring. But now that they have all these other pieces to help space the floor around Diana, there, like you said, there's literally no ceiling for them, and I'm really really excited.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect kind of transition into unless you had anybody else roster wise that you want to speak on. I think we can start with the defense. And I kind of let you go first because the player that I had in mind, I mentioned Rebecca Allen a little bit earlier. I was going to start with defense for her, so I'll let you go ahead and speak, and then we can kind of piggyback off each other from there.
Yeah, the duo between Natasha and Kalia on the defensive end of the court is going to be really exciting to see. Like we said earlier, dream team type squad. I think Sophie's also will take a big jump. I think she's going to take a lot of motivation from the pieces around her to step it up big time on both ends of the court, and I think that's really going to take be the thing that propels this team. It's not going to be any specific skill set that takes a big jump. It's just everyone motivating everyone to be better. And I think the biggest thing is going to be on the defense with specifically, especially within the starters, those three players, Sophie, Kalia, and Natasha.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think in addition to the other things I mentioned with them playing faster, having more athleticism, having more scoring insulation around Brittany and Diana, I think the other big thing is that the other three players in the starting lineup with those two are all known for having a certain level that they can reach defensively that's borderline elite, if not elite, when they really, push their chips on the table and they really lock in on the defensive side of the floor. Natasha Cloud has been one of the best point guard defenders and one of the more versatile defenders, not just guarding guards, but also being able to guard up and switch to guard
Yeah.
forwards and, sometimes being quote unquote mismatches and very much hold her own and then some, and then obviously let her teammates know, let her opponent know, and get the crowd engaged from there. When you have that again from your point guard, your leader, it just galvanizes the rest of the team in such a different way. As a fire starter type of player on the defensive
Yeah.
side. You add that to everything that Kalia Copper is in versatility. You talked about Natasha being able to guard up multiple positions. Kalia Copper can do the exact same thing. She does it with more athleticism, more juice. She's an excellent defender on the ball. I think she's also underrated off the ball in terms of her ability to navigate screens, her ability to make rotations that you're going to need to around Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner. I think she's a hand in glove fit on the wing to everything that Sophie Cunningham has been establishing at the 4 spot the last 2 seasons. And that's a perfect transition to her because I feel like the reps that she's added up over the last couple of seasons when they transitioned her to playing more small forward and power forward, even more specifically on the defensive side of the ball. That's a different type of versatility that they have that other teams don't have to the extent that they do. They can truly switch 1 through 4 around everything that Brittany Griner does in the paint and live with whoever the matchup is that ultimately ends up guarding the person that's going to take a shot. They have people that can show great help around, again, the athleticism and the speed that they're going to be able to fly around with and cause chaos defensively is it's gonna be tough to deal with over the course of 40 minutes. And again, you add that to everything that Brittany Griner is in the paint. If somebody does happen to get blown by or lose leverage guarding the ball, now you got to deal with one of the best shot blockers of all time in all of basketball, women's or men's side, in the paint, just chilling on the porch. Rarely will Brittany have to, step up to the level of the screen unless they just truly desire to, because they have so many pieces around her that can navigate those screens, and you can just generally trust them to do their job in containing the ball and get up solid contests on jump shots. So I think like you said, the big thing for them is gonna be the defense because they're gonna be able to score with anybody. And if they can score off of the general sustained level of defense they can potentially see, I think this is the team that can truly be a contender and take anybody in a playoff series.
I see some comments talking about how they were a little bit worried about losing Megan Gustafsson to the Aces, and I definitely understand your fret there. But I also think that signing Rebecca Allen was the perfect way to kind of get over that hump. They addressed the issue as soon as it happened, and they didn't allow it to become an issue during the season, which I think is huge for this management and the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think losing Megan was certainly something, but I think they definitely re-upped in a positive way. Obviously, you lose a little bit of the size element that Megan brings to that 4 position, even at the 5 at times behind Brittany Griner. But I think with Rebecca Allen specifically, the wingspan is second to only Dewana Bonner in terms of players that play that 4 spot across the entire W. A lot of teams have uh, either older guards that have transitioned to playing the forward position, or shorter, smaller forwards that are playing the forward to kind of keep that floor spacing and just keep the level of versatility up, especially when they get into reserve units. But with Rebecca Allen, if she's coming in for Sophie Cunningham, you're seeing a plus in the size. And
Yeah.
and when she's clicking, Rebecca can shoot just as well as Sophie as well and provide the floor spacing. There's a level of calmness that she provides to everything that is going to be spark plug from, players like Rebecca or from Kalia Copper and Natasha Cloud. And I think there's just so many perfect
Ups.
balances across the roster, whether it's starting or into the reserve units. And I think their top 6 is going to be as good as anybody's going into this season.
I definitely am not going to say that losing Megan was and getting Rebecca was like us making it out better, but I think people are concerned more about the culture shift that's going to happen without Megan, and I definitely would understand that, except for the fact that we got one of the best culture establishers in the league and getting Natasha Cloud. So yes, I definitely understand what you guys are saying, but I think you will be very happy with the product you see on the floor from our leader and point guard, Natasha.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that glue. She's just such a glue piece. I think all of those leadership things that you saw, even from Skylar Diggins-Smith, obviously she didn't play last season, and there was certainly her presence was felt in her absence. In terms of, like I said, in those kind of spells that come over the course of 40 minutes, being able to uplift, not just with playing, but also with the leadership and being able to pull and tug at the strings of teammates to keep things afloat and really even get the most out of them. Again, I think she's very much akin to everything that Natasha's going to bring. It's going to look a little different. It's going to feel a little different. But I think it's all going to be ultimately close to the same, if not potentially better, just because those are both very much playoff and championship caliber point guards, both in leadership and all the intangibles you want to speak to, but also with their actual play and skill. And I think, again, if you're getting that in addition to the defense that those type of point guards bring, you're in such a good position that you can almost insulate any type of loss you might have had in leadership that existed prior to adding a player of that caliber.
I also think that a lot of people are negating the amount of time that Natasha, Kalia, Rebecca Allen have spent in the league. Like we're talking about 8-year veterans here. We're not talking about 2, 3 year. I've just been in the league floating around. Like no, we're talking about people with legitimate experience in legitimate crunch time in games. And that is so valuable in trying to build in Phoenix. I think if you want to contend, you need people that want to contend, and that is exactly what they got.
Yeah, I think you said that extremely well. And I think that level of experience, I mean, maybe outside of the Las Vegas Aces, and I mean, I guess you could speak to the Liberty as well. Though Sabrina doesn't have as much experience as the players, surrounding her in that starting lineup in New York. No other team might have as much experience compiled position by position that the Mercury have, again, with their top 6. Speaking to those 6 players specifically, so many of those players have championship level experience, winning championship level experience, understanding those different type of inner team workings that have to be conducive to winning. Again, especially when you have so much newness, when you have players that have that know-how, not just how to fit in, but also how to make things work in an optimized way. Yeah, I don't think Nate Tibbetts could have dreamt up a better scenario to be coaching in terms of a first year of coaching a brand new team with so many new pieces. I feel like they'll be able to bridge that gap that a first year coach might not have to, or they might have to tend to, just because they'll have the level of leadership, like I said, and experience that'll help them get over a lot of things that might have been adversities or hurdles for such a new team to get over. They'll be able to kind of go over it a little bit more smoothly.
Well, and I think that with Nate Tibet's coming in for his first year with all of this experienced pieces, it makes his job a little bit easier to help it all mesh together when he doesn't have to handhold so much. And at the end of the day, these people they play together on Olympic teams. They've played in the same league, and there's only 12 teams. They can only play so many other people, so they all know each other's playing styles very well. I think that makes it easy when you're coming into a new program and you're trying to make a championship contender. And I think that's exactly what Nate Tibet's is doing. He's bought into the talent in Phoenix, and the talent in Phoenix is bought into Nate Tibet's, seemingly. So I think they got a real chance to be a contender. I know we had talked about a top five finish, and I think that that is definitely possible with this group.
Yeah, I think their floor would be fifth in the just general WNBA standings by the end of the season, and I think if they were to finish fifth, it would be a lot more attributed to so much newness around the team and just so many moving pieces kind of integrating and ingratiating themselves with each other. But ultimately, again, they'll be ready come playoff time just because of the experience we're speaking to, and I think it's gonna be fun to watch this team. It's gonna be a new flavor for the Phoenix Mercury to see.
Agreed. And Jacob Franklin just messaged me actually, and we have a super chat from my bestie Tyler. So I just want to give him his flowers. He has had me on his podcast a couple times, got me in the door to where I need to be. So I really just want to say thank you to him for congrats on the debut, Erica and Steven. I can't wait to see you at the home opener versus our girl Haley. I know it's going to be devastating to watch her lose to the Mercury in the season opener, but that's going to be okay. I think they stack up pretty well as well as any team in the West against the Aces, is what I want to say. I'm not going to compare them to a Liberty just yet because I think that I was just talking with a friend of mine about how I personally think we're going to be seeing the Liberty and Aces feud for years to come. We've got 5+ years of Liberty and Aces feuds to watch, which is so exciting for the league. But nonetheless, like I really do believe that Mercury has the talent and the belief that they can buy in and get to where they need to be contenders against the Aces when in crunch time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And again, you don't spend the money that Matt Ishbia is
Yeah.
on this team if your ultimate desire isn't to be at that level, which is obviously where the Aces are. It's the Aces and everybody else is chasing them at this moment in time, not just on the court, but also off the court and how their franchise is operating, how the people are being treated, all of those things. So they're taking steps towards that direction. It's going to take work, and they're not going to get there and just, putting the roster together over the course of an offseason. It's going to take diligence. It's going to take discipline. It's going to take some uncomfortable moments to grow through. But again, when you put the best thing you can do is give yourself an opportunity. And I think Matt Ishbia is very much an opportunist and looking at just giving teams a chance to, do ultimately what the ultimate goal is. And now we're going to start to see the work being laid from the foundation established in training camp, transitioning into the first preseason game tomorrow against a team that will very much be in their way over the course of the season with the Seattle Storm. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to kind of watch and just see the inner workings of this team and how things kind of evolve over the 40-game regular season.
I also think we got really lucky with the two preseason games that we have. I think they're two really good teams to see how we match up against a lot of different types of basketball. And so I'm really excited that we're going to get to see them play the Storm first and then the Sparks on Friday. I think, like I said, it's just going to give us a really good sense of what to expect from this team when the season actually does start.
I think those are great points. I think sometimes just in the preseason being treated by fans as not counting, the coaches and the players take the preseason very much seriously in the W because you only have 2 games, and that is like your opportunity to go against somebody that's not a teammate, and you only get 2 opportunities just before the season starts, literally a week before the season starts, if not just a few days before. So you have to take advantage of any opportunity you have to test things, especially again with the newness surrounding this team. And I think they'll very much be treating these games like dress rehearsals in a sense, trying to establish a rotation, see what players work with others. How can you scheme wise do things around Diana and do things around Brittany Griner with the 3 players or the 4 players that we spoke to that bring things defensively that are going to be important for this team. I think this is going to be a lot to gauge from the decisions that Nate and his brain trust are going to make over these 2 games leading into the very first game. And I think they're going to be thrown into the fire, and we're going to see a lot revealed from this team through their first 6 to 8 games. They got some heavy hitters waiting for them as soon as the regular season starts. So it's not going to be a slow integration into things. They're going to be very much tested almost immediately. We're seeing the Aces in 2 of their first 3 games, even more specifically.
Yeah, I think and the W life comes at you fast. They definitely are. We're gonna see how things shape up here very very quickly. I was actually just talking to someone. It kind of seems like cuts are happening a little slower than normal this year. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything in particular, but I have been seeing things, and it does feel like it's been a lot slower. Teams are holding their cards closer to the chest
Yeah,
than
I
they have
agree.
in seasons past. I feel like, unfortunately, because there's so many talented players and such limited rosters spaces, as well as the cap situation presently, we've seen players get cut somewhat surprisingly, and like you mentioned, a lot quicker than we've seen this season. Hopefully that's a sign for where things are headed with expansion and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, I do agree with you. It feels like things have been a lot slower on that side of things this season compared to the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah. I'm interested to see also how the Olympic break affects everyone. I was talking to you a little bit on the phone about how I feel like Diana's going to get a little bit of a break because of the Olympics, and it's going to kind of help us in the latter part of the season. I think it definitely like gives us a better opportunity to be competitors late in the season because we do have some age, and not that that wears on you, but you get a little tired. So I think it'll give her a good opportunity to kind of give her a mid-season reset, and they don't have to travel for All Star. Like I just think it's a huge double whammy for Diana and some of the older, people on the roster.
Yeah, I think the rest, if any team or any particular player is benefiting from that gap, obviously should be playing. But I think Diana will benefit maybe more than any other player that's at an advanced basketball age from that Olympic break. And obviously, like you mentioned as well, having the All Star game at the crib is also an asset and also definitely a plus for her and everything that she's trying to do to just preserve herself for another inevitable playoff run that's going to certainly have demands on her skill, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but also on defense. So I think those are all great points you're making right there.
This is absolutely definitely feels like a year that playoffs are expected, and if it doesn't happen, there's going to be some people really upset in the front office. Is how it feels. The expectations are raised now. They want to go places. They want to win. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, most definitely. Did you have any thoughts on the offensive side of things? I know we've been talking about the defense and the new players and the onus that's going to be on that end. But what about this high power offense that we're going to see?
I'm really excited, honestly, to see Diana in her 20th year do what Diana does. I think this is going to be a really special year for her in terms of scoring, honestly. I think she's going to be able to play off the ball a little more than normal, which I think is going to give her a better opportunity to be open. And then the players around her are going to allow to space the floor a little bit better. And so I think that it's going to give her so much better of an opportunity to showcase her talent, which is at the end of the day scoring, and that's what we want to see her do. So I think that's really going to be exciting this year. Just with the pieces around her, distributing to her is going to be really fun.
For sure. Yeah, for me, as with the defense, there's so much to talk about this team on the offensive side of the ball. I think you hit the first big domino on the head, and that's the fact that Diana is relieved of having to score X amount of points to contend or compete on a game by game basis. There might be games where Diana only has to score 10 points and the Mercury will win by 20
Yeah.
because they've done such a great job insulating her for the long haul. Can kind of, now I'm not gonna say cruise control because she's not gonna take games off, but the demand, the lack thereof of a demand that she's been accustomed to over the course of her career is not gonna be there, and it's gonna feel like she's in cruise control in pockets to where she can just preserve herself in a sense for the fourth quarter and for those clutch opportunities where she's been arguably the greatest of all time, especially on the women's side, but generally in basketball and coming through and doing things when the team needs it the absolute most. Being able to preserve and save that for multiple stretches over the regular season, not on a gamely basis, but even more so and more specifically to a playoff stage, is everything. And I think naturally, in addition to that, like you said, her not always having to have the ball in her hands nearly as much, having players like Kalia Copper and Natasha Cloud, who are not just two of the better athletes on their specific positions, but also two of the better drivers of the basketball in the entire WNBA, is going to help open her up for opportunities to get a lot more clean catch and shoot opportunities, because in years past where she may have seen teams helping off of X player or Y player or Z player around her when she's got the ball, who's going to get helped off of to where a team is going to be comfortable? Are you going to leave 40% three-point shooting Sophie Cunningham wide open for three and live with that gambit? Are you going to leave Kalia Copper, who's uh, uh, just a high volume shooting three-point shooter that's grown, especially last season, showing that she could do so on volume and efficiency? Are you going to leave Natasha Cloud, who 2 seasons ago made sure everybody knew in training camp that she is a shooter, and she proved it as teams continue with the gambit of trying to play off of her, and she made them pay with three after three after three, especially in meaningful moments? Where's the help going to come from that's going to be comfortable for a defense? And when you start asking those type of questions and why a team might try this or why a team might try that, I think this starting five has multiple answers to any type of coverage or any type of schematic tactic that an opposing team might try to throw at them. If you're switching, are you going to switch off of Brittany Griner, and are you going to live with that mismatch? Are you going to send double teams at Brittany Griner? Last season, in addition to everything else she showed, she proved to be better as a passer off of those double teams than she was prior to, coming back from her stint overseas with everything that happened before last season. I think all of those little dominoes just adding up, in addition to obviously having Rebecca Allen off the bench as well to insulate with offense, but also with defense. Again, they has embarrassment of riches for a first year coach. I think we can't overstate that, honestly.
I think you actually hit the nail on the head earlier talking about defense, and I think it goes on both sides of the floor to where this team is really just going to be able to create chaos. Like you said, you really are going to have to make a decision and and live with it. What's going to leave you sleepless at night? Are you going to leave Natasha, Diana? Who are you going to just live with? And I think that the chaos that they're going to be able to create on both sides of the ball is going to be very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's some of the best spacing that I feel Diana Taurasi will have seen over the course of her career, which says a lot because clearly she's been on multiple championship teams. I think the breathing room that she's gonna feel, not just see, but like literally feel, is gonna feel it's gonna feel like something that she desired her entire career. It's obviously hard to construct it with salary cap and all of that stuff, but them finally, checking off so many of those boxes around her is gonna free her. And like you said, she's gonna be in for a big season. I also think that it's going to be intriguing to see what flavor and what style of offense Nate Tibbetts brings in terms of installing for how this team is going to operate in the half court. When you have so many different pieces and you have so many different ways that you can invert your offense with paint touches, whether that be, like I mentioned, Natasha from the point of attack or Kalia Copper from the wing, getting paint touches galore and just blowing past their matchups and generating help. Or obviously, even before those two, Brittany Griner and her post touches. They have so many different ways to play inside-out basketball, in addition to the ability to grab rebounds. Natasha's one of the best guard rebounders in WNBA history, and I think that grittiness, in addition to Kalia Copper being a stingy rebounder as well, to go with Sophie Cunningham, who's still growing at that position or at the four, and being able to box out and grab boards, as well as obviously Brittany Griner and Rebecca Allen. In addition to all of that, I think this team is going to have a lot of different ways that they can just scratch and claw and just really tug at the strings of an opponent and put them in compromising situations. And honestly, situations and scenarios that they just can't be right in. And again, when you're talking about this team on a playoff stage through a playoff lens, because that's what they were built for, this is kind of where you want to be. You want to be having these conversations early before we've even seen the on-court product. And I think they're right where they would like to be at.
Absolutely. The last thing I really want to get to before we head off for the day, I think we've done great work today, but I really want to talk about the rookies for just a second. I think that I want to hear if you have any thoughts about Charisma Osborne in particular, and then also Bella Mercatete. I already talked about her a little bit, but just kind of what are you looking to see from the rookies? Are you looking for anything in particular at these preseason games? Just kind of what do you want to see from them?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity for those two is going to come in the preseason just because it's such a vet heavy top six. And with the aspirations they have, it's going to take Herculean type efforts for a first year player to, carve out a niche in the main rotation, obviously excluding any type of injury that might occur. So I don't really have anything in particular that I'm looking at from those two, just really to see if there's any traction as far as those two or even one of those two having stand power. And the main thing that Nate Tabes is going to be trying to get to with this rotation, with this, like I mentioned, veteran heavy squad that they've assembled. I do like all of the non basketball things that you mentioned, just generally with the personalities meshing and fitting together. I also think that there is a niche that might not necessarily be on the court for these younger pieces that they have coming through. And I think the biggest thing with that is just kind of breaking up some of the mundaneness that comes when you have a veteran heavy franchise and team that you have on the court in the main rotation. Just being able to kind of break some of that up, inject some youthfulness, inject some like I heard a couple of players and coaches talk about, it's like TikTok energy. It's like you got these players that are used to this one thing, and the W's becomes a little bit mundane at times, but you infuse in some youth and some youthful energy to things. It just kind of helps you get through the regular season a little bit more and just adds personality to the entire team dynamic. But I'm curious, what have been your observations of the younger pieces? Do you think anybody has stand power? Where's your mind at on that?
Well, I keep leaving her out every time I talk about the rookies, but Kristen Williams out of UConn, I know she's coming off injury, and everyone's spoken so highly of her in training camp and how she treated rehab. And I was watching her shoot yesterday, and girl has a beautiful shot. So I'm really hoping that she can carve out some playing time and she makes the roster. I know it's tough when, especially you're coming off an injury, to make a WNBA squad after not playing basketball for 2 years. But I'm really interested to see what she's able to do in this preseason so that she can hopefully have an opportunity to make the final roster, because she's been really funny in training camp. She's been fun to watch. Diana loves her also. It's that Yukon blood. So Diana views her as family, and I think that that's huge when you have a player at Diana's caliber to take in a rookie and, love her from the jump and be ready to have her join the squad. And so I'm really looking for something from her over this next couple days. And then someone else we actually haven't talked about too much is Miss Sugg Sutton. And I kind of feel bad that we've left her out now that we've been yapping this long and haven't mentioned her even a single time.
Yeah, Suge is fun, and I think that's the type of player that you would like to have around everything else that you're establishing in, like we mentioned, your top six type of players. Suge is a veteran, a player that's been around the block a few times. It's not going to be Suge's first rodeo by any stretch of the imagination. Again, just compiling experience. There's a level of invaluability that comes with having experience and having veteran know-how and just general. I've been here before. When you get to playoff settings, you can look at Sid Colson for the Las Vegas Aces last season. That's going to be a similar type of role for Suge with this team. And again, you look at all of the injuries that took place, and the big red emergency button had to get hit from Becky Hammond for um for Sid Colson last season in the championship specifically. And again, that's as big of a stage as it gets to have to hit the big red emergency button. And to have somebody that's so reliable, so where the teammates, the players in the rotation is not going to get broken for a lack of trust in the player that's being brought in, just because they've seen the work, they've seen the deposits, they've seen the intentionality behind everything. Again, with the veteran know-how, that's the type of thing you need in those type of settings. And I think the other big player that I didn't mention that I definitely wanted to make note of was Morgan Birch. I think there's going to be opportunity for Morgan coming into a new scenario that is going to present opportunity for her to just kind of establish a niche in everything that they're doing. I think with the front court pieces that they're going to have going behind Sophie Cunningham and Brittany Griner, the biggest thing they're going to be looking for is for space to be provided from the perimeter. And Morgan is a player that showed with the Chicago Sky last season that she can provide not just spacing, but also shooting within that spacing and versatility. Being able to play off of the short roll if extra attention is given to a guard after she sets a screen. Being able to not just screen and roll, but screen and pop, and be able to slip out of screens and just generally be able to be a connective type of piece around everything that they're going to want from front court pieces. I think Morgan Birch has an opportunity to carve out a niche in the main rotation. And obviously it'll take some consistency that we didn't see from her in her stint with the Chicago Sky after the All-Star break last season, but I think nonetheless opportunity is there for her.
She shot 45%, so I guess she didn't do too bad, huh?
Exactly. It's just all about sustaining for her and keeping that confidence. I think is the biggest thing.
Well, I'll be looking forward to meeting her on Media Day on Thursday. That being said, I think we've done great work today. What do you think? Great work?
Yeah, great work. I think this is an excellent hello from both of us too to everybody in Mercury Nation. So I'm looking forward to speaking more with everybody and just generally talking over this microphone with you going forward.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait for us to have our backdrops. Sorry, everybody, that we don't match yet. We're on it, okay? We're working on it. But I think it's going to be a really exciting year. I think we're going to have a blast together on the pod. I know the chat is having a grand old time today. It looks like everybody's just having a yeehaw time over there. That's what I keep looking at over there. So,
Shout out to everybody in the chat for real. We appreciate the
just like
love.
Mike says, y'all are smarter than me, so keep doing what you're doing. But I'm Steven, tell me where they can find you on Twitter and whatnot.
Yeah, you all can find me on Twitter at STAYTRUESDOT and the number 3. Stay true S.3. I'll be talking plenty of Mercury basketball, especially after tomorrow's preseason game. From that point on, there's going to be a whole lot to speak on, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of intriguing stuff. Looking forward to just, generally engaging with you all and, talking hoop, asking you all questions. What are your perspective on things? What's the temperature check for you all? If you don't follow me from the Sun side of things, I definitely love to get into the weeds on everything. And also, like I mentioned, engage with you all as well to see where you all are with everything. So let's make this basketball space of ours a better one in terms of the discourse. And let's have some fun this season. Let's do it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to meet you. I know everyone's like, "Oh, when's Steven gonna be at a game?" He's coming, okay, everybody? We're working on both of these things,
For
okay?
sure.
Nonetheless, though, my Twitter is Erica with a K, Lea Day, like Tuesday. And you can follow me over on PHNX Wildcats as well. I'll be on that show tomorrow at 10:30. So if you guys need anything else from me, you know where to find me. And we are really excited. We'll be back on Thursday at 6 o'clock, so same time, Mondays and Thursdays. But we're really, really excited to do this with you guys.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you on Thursday.
We all silly like the mayor.